Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Collision Vision driven by Auto Body News. As always, I'm your host, Cole Strandberg. Today's guest made waves recently when she announced a major move within the collision repair industry earlier this year. Michelle Sullivan is the CEO of Certified Collision Group, a member network platform that serves nearly 800 highly successful independent collision repair shops across the US and Canada. Today, Michelle and I will dive into some high-level industry trends, the future of independent collision repairs, and how independent shops can stay competitive in an increasingly consolidated industry. Enjoy the show. Michelle Sullivan, thank you so much for joining us today on the Collision Vision.
Hi, Cole. Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to a great conversation. I feel like you and I go relatively way back, but I've known you for many years in a couple different roles. But firstly, congrats on the new role. Tell us a bit about your background and your career, and then most recently, your decision to head CCG.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much. So it's interesting. My career in this industry started about 30 years ago in Baltimore. So my background is in organizational behavior. And I had an opportunity to work for a PBE distributor in Baltimore, so in an HR capacity. So I joined the organization. Shortly after joining, they added marketing to my level of responsibility. And that's really when I started going out into the field and meeting different customers, and really talking to them about the industry and some of the challenges that they were having. And in return for them sharing their knowledge about the industry, I was able to share some of my experiences with them, as it related to pay plans or team development or developing high performing teams. And so it was a really nice exchange of information. And I didn't come from the industry, so you can imagine I had a ton of questions. I was asking a lot of my customers as I was really just like a sponge, just trying to learn everything. So it was interesting because when I started working for Superior Auto Paints in Baltimore, I realized that I worked for one of the most dynamic entrepreneurs in the industry, Bernie Blickenstaff. And he was so passionate about educating the industry. And if you think about in the 90s, there just weren't a lot of companies out there that were so focused on training. So I had an opportunity to really learn a lot from him. He was doing KPIs. He was doing productivity audits. He was measuring results in the paint department. I mean, he was training, really just passionate about making the body shops better and more efficient. So I felt really lucky to land in that company, if you will. So I moved into operations, and then shortly I moved into sales leadership. And that was really when I learned so much more, because I had this core group of customers and vendors and a lot of mentors along the way that really took me under their wing. I do think they liked that I didn't come from the industry, so they had a lot to teach me. And but we had so much fun, and I worked in every department in that company, and that set me up to ultimately take over that organization as president at the age of 32. So we had a lot of fun over the next 10 years. I had a really strong management team, and we were growing, and we were growing quickly. So we had 2 acquisitions, one in Virginia. Then, of course, we merged with Matos Pro Finishes in the DC market. We ended up with 17 stores. We were in a lot of different states. And then we ultimately positioned the company to sell to a national distributor. And that's really when I pivoted and I decided to join the paint manufacturing side. So in 2012, I joined AkzoNobel. I held a couple different sales positions in the organization. And I was starting to work again with some customers, some regional customers, and even some of the nationals. And the neat part about working for AkzoNobel after coming from Superior was I came from that distributor. So I started working with distributors, and I was able to really have a different perspective. And I knew what they needed out of a strong manufacturing partner because I knew what I needed as a distributor. So I think that was really helpful in my experiences at AkzoNobel. So I left there and joined Finish Master. I joined Finish Master as a regional vice president for the Southeast portion of the United States. And then I expanded over into Texas and Oklahoma. So again, I was working with the large collision centers, dealer groups, regional MSOs, and the single store operators. So Finish Master went through a lot of change, and I had an opportunity to go back to AkzoNobel in 2019. And I went in as a senior sales leader. I had responsibility for North America. And then I ended up taking over as a US sales director for the eastern half of the US. So I covered about 28 states. I was responsible for all things paint under vehicle refinish and fleet for the eastern half of the US. And, one of the things that was really constant throughout my career was I was just surrounded by so many great teammates and so many great mentors and so many great customers that just helped me along the way. And I'm really grateful for those people that, took me under their wing, especially in the early days, like Bernie, John Halstead, and Bob Ellenson were three that come to mind. And I say that because I started volunteering in the industry, I would say maybe like early 2000s. And one of the organizations I'm really passionate about is the Women's Industry Network. So they started their first conference in 2006, which I attended. And I just fell in love with the organization. And so I started getting involved with, the different committees. I ultimately served on the board of directors for 7 years. And then I ended up being the chair. And I say that because, I do believe it's all of our responsibility to be what you needed for others. And I'm very passionate about that. So my 30-year journey has prepared me for where I am today, and that's CEO of CCG. So super excited.
Oh, that's it. And I want to dive into that. I love your background. We talked about it pre-show, coming from different spots within the industry, each with its own unique perspective. I think gives you a real advantage for this exciting new role. And congratulations again. Tell
Thank
us
you.
about what you're doing, what led you to the opportunity with Certified Collision Group.
So it's a great question. And I'll tell you, I believe in the model. I remember 10 years ago when CCG came to the marketplace and they really filled a market need. Industry dynamics were changing, consolidation was ramping up, and really they came in with the premise of kind of leveling the playing field for the independent repairers. And their premise was the OE certifications and really improving shop performance. So I mean, how can you not get behind that? And so I also had the benefit of being a vendor partner to CCG. So I was able to see firsthand what some of those affiliates were experiencing, whether it was shop performance or performance management or the vendor programs. It was impactful. So when the opportunity came up, Marty has, moved to the chairman of the board, and there was an opportunity, and I was thrilled. And it's funny because if you think about it, it's a big industry, but it's really not. And I say that because it's a full circle moment for me, because I'm working with a lot of customers, a lot of vendors, and a lot of stakeholders that I've worked with at some point in my career. So, and I'm happy to say today, this week marks 60 days in the new role. So it's been a lot of fun, Cole.
Oh, excited. It's been a strong start and you've made some waves. You're only just getting started. So excited to keep in touch and keep following along with your journey and CCG's journey. We go back when we first connected. I think we crossed paths a fair bit working on the vendor side of things, doing some work with big national accounts. And I think the most exciting part about your background for me is getting to see and interact and know so many different operators, from the big national consolidators to the regional MSOs to the independent shops.
Yeah.
Consolidation is one of the hottest topics in the industry today. You've been around it from every angle. What do you see with consolidation? What do you see happening for the future of independent collision repairers?
It's a great question, and it's something that, we talk about a lot. And consolidation, is here, it's continuing. There's no sign of it slowing down in 2024. And it's interesting because we're seeing a lot of, regional private equity backed platforms coming into the industry. I think about a guy like Paul Williams, right? He's an industry executive. I know he was a guest on your show recently. But with Brightpoint, I mean, we're seeing more and more of that. And I don't see that slowing down. But what's interesting when I think about, yes, the consolidators are growing, no question about that. But so are the regionals and so are single store operators. And that's really what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of interest in the OE certifications, right? That has to continue, right? When we think about what do they need to do to position themselves, we have a lot of, shops that have the multiple OE certs. And, the high performing shops are really focused on culture. Culture trumps everything. And it's interesting when I look at some of the trends that we're seeing, labor shortages are here, right? That's not new. I think we've been talking about that since I started in 1994. But, we have organizations like CREF and ICAR and Collision Engineering and TechForce that are a bigger part of the solution today. And I think, I'm excited about the future of the industry because I see that we're paying more attention to that than ever before. We're having those career pathing conversations where, we're not just competing with other body shops, we're competing with other trades. And we've got to get crystal clear on making sure that people have what they need. We understand their why, we know where they want to go, and we give them what they need. So yeah, consolidation will continue, but so will the independents. They'll continue to thrive. More pressure on having that exceptional customer service experience. I know there's been a lot of talk around that. Everyone wants that Amazon type experience. Everything is easy, and our industry is no exception to that. So shops that figure that out will get there, and they'll be successful. The other thing that I see is embracing technology. In every aspect of the body shop. We see a lot of shops that are looking to have that advantage and, even incorporating their customer experience with the digital technology. Ryan Taylor, he's got some great ideas. He's actually going to be at our conference. So he's going to be addressing some of our affiliates, when we have our conference in a few weeks. And, but there's a ton of reasons to be excited about the future of this industry.
I don't know that there has been a 2-minute stretch with more exciting different paths to go down in the history of the Collision Vision. Like, there are so many things that you just said that I want to latch onto, and we only have time for a few. Some that I'll breeze by and reiterate is the regional MSO and the path forward for those guys and the private equity interest. That's no joke. That's not going anywhere.
Right.
Technology, what a topic. And there are so many different paths we could go down on the technology side. And as a matter of fact, on the Collision Vision, we are preparing to do just that and take a deep dive into the world of collision technology. Where I do want to latch on to and dive a little bit deeper in, you mentioned a care for and a focus on culture among high performers within the industry. You've gotten exposure to some real high performers within the industry and some great organizations. So my question to you, what do you see separate the elite organizations from the rest of the pack?
It's a great question. And I see the strong operators that are able to cascade that culture throughout their organization where they're creating an ownership mindset. And they've got people on the team that, want to contribute, and they know the score. There's a level of transparency. People want to be part of a winning team. And what I see more and more is the people that are paying attention to culture, they don't have those issues with retention, right? They're keeping their teams are engaged. And there's something to be said for that with the employees. And maybe my background comes out a little bit here, but I read this quote a long time ago and it stuck with me. Your customer experience will never be greater than your employee experience. I mean, think about that. That's so powerful. So when we look at what are those high performers, the best of the best doing, they're really focused on their people, because we can never forget we're in the people business. The OE certifications, that's something that they're doing. They're giving back to their communities. They're creating that experience. I mean, and you've been in a lot of shops too. So, remember the first time you walked into a shop and there was no chaos? It was almost eerie, wasn't it? I mean, I can remember the very first time I walked into a shop and it was quiet. And they had figured out how to create those processes that minimize that chaos. And it's not that they weren't busy and it's not that they didn't have a backlog. They just figured it out. So I think we're seeing more and more of that. And the shops that are adapting, they're the ones that are winning.
It's funny you mentioned the eeriness of that quiet and relaxed shop. I remember going out to lunch with the operator of a huge dealership, specifically collision center in South Florida. And at the end of lunch, he looks at me, he goes, "Did you notice my phone?" I was like, What are you talking about?" He's like, "Did you notice it didn't ring once?" That's the mark of a like
Yes,
the perfect business. No business is perfect, but that's the mark of a well-run organization when it's not reliant on one person. It's
right.
people know what they have to do or they figure it out. And in a lot of cases, that's because employees are empowered to do that,
Yes.
to tackle
Yes.
problems. So
Yeah.
I want to expand on this piece of the conversation some and tie in specifically how it relates to the smaller independent shops of the world. There's a lot of talk about how the independent shop is going away. And I think you and I both, to an extent, disagree with that. I think there are some levers that can be pulled, some roads to follow, and some roadmaps that have proven to be really effective for those types of operators. Tactically, what are some of the things that our independent single store, two store operators should be thinking about as they look to not only survive in this evolving ecosystem, but to thrive as well?
So I'm a huge supporter of peer groups and 20 groups and networks. And I'll tell you what we're really proud at of what we've done at CCG is we've built a high performing collision community of almost 800 like minded operators. I mean, think about the power in that. And for me, the ability to connect those people, because no matter where you are in life, someone's helped you get there. And so we have a lot of people in this industry that want to help others. So, if you have a single store right now and you want to get to two or you want to get to three, and you're part of a group, of a peer group or a 20 group, you've got these people that you can bounce ideas off of that have been there. So I'm a huge supporter of, creating that community, if you will, and really just learning from each other and sharing best practices. And that not only makes your shop better, but that makes us better as an overall industry, right? Where we're not fighting so much each other, we're all rising together. So I think for the independents, that have a single store, I would strongly recommend that they get involved with some kind of 20 group, some kind of network, whatever that looks like for them. Um, because really, like I say at conference, I mean, that's my favorite part of the conference that we put together is like bringing all these like-minded operators together, and we have great content, but watching them network and watching them stay connected is really powerful.
No, well put. Such an advocate for peer groups. And you look at typically the types of shop owners who are in peer groups, and it's like, man, these are some of the elites of the elites. So the question is, are they elite because of the peer group, or are they in a peer group because they're elite? Either way, seems like you'd want to emulate that. And you look at even
Right.
outside of the collision industry, CEOs, very successful CEOs know the importance of peer groups in organizations like Vistage and things. So entrepreneurship within India, any industry can feel like you're on an island. The peer group not only alleviates that feeling, but it gives you ideas to see how other
Right.
people are doing it. We all have some similar problems, and people have figured out how to address those. Don't reinvent the wheel, just learn from people who have already done it effectively. So I could not agree more. And I think that's fantastically put. Talk about CCG a little bit. I know you mentioned the conference coming up. I want to learn a little bit more about that, but I also want to learn, you have nearly 800 shops. What's kind of the perfect shop to join the Certified Collision Group network?
So the perfect shop to join CCG is one that has industry leading KPI performance and that has OE certifications and has a great standing in the community. That is really what we look for. What CCG does is, like I mentioned, we have performance management groups that work with the different shops on how to improve their businesses. We give access to insurance carriers. So if you're looking for that, while we don't do OE certification, but it is a requirement, we can help a shop get there with what's required from a training standpoint or an equipment standpoint. So, when I think about, what we look for, we really look for the top performing best in market shops. That makes a great affiliate for CCG.
Fantastic. And talk to us a little bit as well. I want to give you a chance to kind of platform here. Talk about the conference you have coming up. Talk about as much as you can of the network. And I know we've done a pretty good job talking about the benefits and some of the offerings from CCG as well.
Sure. So our conference is April 21st. It starts on a Sunday. I think we have over 200 people attending. So we have an incredible lineup. And so our affiliates are invited to attend that. And we do a nice vendor show where we have our vendors there as well. We recently just expanded into Canada. Earlier this year, we announced that. So that's exciting for us. So we will also have a Canadian presence at our conference. And so our conference is really our annual event that we do. But what's really interesting is when you look at the growth that we've had with CCG. I mean, today we're in 46 states across the US. And it's interesting because one of the biggest things that our affiliates really love about the network is these are high performing operators that have really built solid reputations in their market. They're very much involved with the community, and their name and their legacy is important to them. We have a very non-intrusive model. So you don't have to change your name. You don't have to give up everything that you've built. And our affiliates tell us they really love that. So that's an area. So when you look around and see that we're in 46 states, you wouldn't know because there's not a CCG sign up, on the outside of the building. But and the fact that our expansion into Canada was something that was really exciting for us. So, we're just continuing to grow. There's a lot of interest in the network. As consolidation continues, people are looking to level the playing field, and that's what the company was built on, that foundation, and that still exists today.
Fantastic. No, that's very, very helpful. I know you are extremely busy and in the early innings of crushing it for CCG. So again, like I said, super excited to keep watching that happen. With that in mind, I'm cognizant of your time. Is there anything we haven't discussed at this point before we start to wrap up that you think we should?
So we covered a lot, and I appreciate that. And you and I have so much passion for this industry. More a comment, and as over 30 years, you see a lot in the industry, and I never take for granted the dedication and the commitment that these operators and the stakeholders have for this industry, for being so passionate about doing proper repairs. And I just want to give a shout out to all those people out there because they're really the difference makers. So I don't want to go without saying that. So
Love that. No, absolutely. I'll echo that as well while we're at it because I could not have said it better myself. Michelle, thank you. With that in mind, we like to wrap up each episode of the Collision Vision with three key takeaways. A lot to choose from our conversation today, but give them to me.
all right. I know we covered a lot of ground, and I always love talking to you because there's so much passion. First, and really all of my takeaways have shown up in kind of my journey, and I've been so grateful, and I'm very humbled by the mentorship that I've had along the way. But the first is embrace being a lifelong learner. There is always something to learn. This industry is changing dramatically. Not only make sure that you're up to speed on what the trends are, what the changes are, but that your team is, and that your organization is positioned for that. You're not responsible just for yourself, but you're responsible for those that you serve. My second, and this probably will come as no surprise, but invest in the development of others. Understand what the individuals on your team want, what their why is, what they need. Understand where they want to go, and be relentless in helping them get there. High top performers, they want to contribute. They love feedback. and really they love the transparency. So if you have a high performer on your team, make sure that you're having regular career path conversations with them, so you don't ever run the risk of losing them for your organization, but more importantly, they leave the industry. So again, that customer experience will never be greater than the employee experience. And then my final one is build your community. Build that community and stay connected. Industry organizations are a great way to be connected to the overall industry. You know, you learn from the organizations, and today more than ever, there is a need for that. And you can find, you know, those 20 groups that we talked about, and really just find a way to stay connected. So you're going to learn from other business owners, and those are my takeaways.
Fantastic takeaways for sure. I have a feeling people are going to want to learn more about CCG, and where can they do that, and where can they follow along with you?
So follow us on LinkedIn. We've got an exciting announcement that's going to come out at conference. So be sure to follow along and you'll see it. Also, our website is certifiedcg.com. And Cole, if you want, you can share my email address in the show notes, and I'm happy to take any questions or engage with anybody that has an interest.
I will take you up on that, as well as include the LinkedIn link and the website. So we'll get everyone all taken care of there. Michelle Sullivan, it is always a pleasure to speak with you. Again, congratulations on the exciting new role with CCG, and really looking forward to staying in touch and following along with your continued journey.
Oh, thank you, Cole. And I appreciate you having me on. Have a great day.
Thank you again to Michelle Sullivan of CCG for joining us on today's show. Michelle's a good industry friend of mine and a fantastic leader in our space. And given her perspective on the industry, I greatly appreciate her insights, and I hope you did as well. I'd like to reiterate Michelle's 3 key takeaways, and those are: number 1, embrace being a lifelong learner. There's always something to learn for you and your team, so never be complacent when it comes to education. Secondly, invest in the development of your team. Help them reach their goals. Be sure to value high performers appropriately. Make sure they're engaged and happy, even career path with them, to help them envision their own goals and help them get there. As Michelle said a couple times throughout our conversation, customer experience will never be greater than your employee experience. I love that line. Lastly, build your community. Industry organizations are a great way to be connected and to keep your finger on the pulse of the industry, its changes, and its best practices. Someone has probably already solved that problem you're having. Be sure to learn from your peers. That's all for today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to follow and share the Collision Vision wherever you enjoy your podcasts, and on YouTube, where the Collision Vision now lives in video form. On behalf of the Auto Body News team and myself, thank you for coming along for the ride.